Hey everyone, okay, so I thought I would give you an update on the Tesla situation. A couple of weeks ago, Tesla Bristol phoned me, just completely out of the blue, and asked me if I would be willing to have my car taken in, as one of the technicians wanted to try a few things. Bear in mind, I hadn't heard anything at all from them, nothing, since the conclusion of the characteristic of the car. And I'll link the video here as well. So I said, yeah, that's fine, absolutely. I then said, exactly, does this mean that Tesla are now actively looking to fix this issue? And he responded with, no, they are not actively looking into this issue at all, but they are willing to have another look at my car, as the technician thinks there's a couple of things that they could do. So they weren't actively going to try and fix it, they were just going to try and deal this one thing, and if it didn't work, it doesn't matter because it was a characteristic of the car. So they then said, because you've driven back and forth so much, we're going to have somebody drive to you, give you the loan car, and we'll drive your car back to save me going back and forward. They couldn't have been nicer, right? They really couldn't have been nicer. Never before has the offer been to pick up my car from where I live, drive it back. I've always had to do the back and forward the whole time. They really couldn't have been nicer. So, it's one thing that's worth noting here in going back to the original issue was that Halfords, who I originally took the car to when I first noticed this issue with the screen, explained that there was some form of skipping on the blade, that it wasn't making proper contact on the glass. Now, the last time it was taken in, they increased the tension on the arm or the blade. They did something to the blade that allowed it to make greater tension. According to the lady who mentioned it to me, they'd increased it to its maximum potential so that they couldn't do it anymore, in her words, because if they did, it would break the glass. And there hadn't been any rain at that point, so I couldn't actually test it to see if that was accurate, if it made any difference. This time around, they did what they call a deep clean, where they polished the glass, strip it with alcohol, polish it, strip it with alcohol, that kind of stuff, right? A really, really deep clean of the glass. They also replaced the blades. They'd replaced the arm beforehand as well. So they did a few things, but the blades were replaced. The glass was given a really, really deep, thorough clean. And the tension had already been set prior to it going back into this time. So I get the car back. It was only gone a couple of days. They drove the car back to me. And as far as I'm aware, the issue is resolved. The screen looks completely crystal clear at night. If I put the windscreen washer on it, it is crystal clear. No smearing, no smudging, no weird pattern on my screen. Which begs the question, why wasn't this done in the first place? Which is what I asked them today, which was, rather than replacing the screen originally, why didn't you just give it a really, really good deep clean and check the tension of the arm, the blade, the contact? Because in my mind, what was happening in these videos was the pattern that you see on the screen, and I'm not a mechanic, is watermarks. And the reason there's watermarks is because the windscreen wiper isn't clearing it. So they're getting left on there and they're staining, causing this pattern. I might be completely wrong in that, but that's my theory on it. But if it was this simple a fix, then why wasn't that done first? Why was 2 windscreens replaced when you kind of want to go with the path of least resistance, right? Because the original finding, the original diagnostic with them was they put an alcohol wipe on the screen, it didn't fix it, so they replaced the screen. But why not look at the tension of the arm, since that was the very first thing that I asked them, that Halford told me there was a problem with the blade making correct contact, that the angle, something to do with the blade was not correct. So why not do that? Because if they had done that in the originally, I would be none the wiser to the fact that they truly, with this outcome, didn't care. And there's also no doubt that they were well aware that this video had been made, because they could not have been nicer. Now, the video was never mentioned during any of the conversations, but it is clear that they'd watched that video because their whole attitude towards it had changed. And that again begs another question. Well, what if there was no YouTube video? What if you don't have a YouTube channel? What if you don't have a large amount of following? What then? Do you not count? Do I count because I'm on YouTube and you don't count because you're not? The issue should have been resolved because it was dangerous. You could see that in all the original footage that I had, that there was a problem with the screen, the windscreen wiper, the glass. And you could see that. But they were willing to let that go and let it be a characteristic of the car. And it's irritating because it doesn't matter what I do for a living, and it doesn't matter what you do for a living. What matters is that you still bought the car, and you have just as much right to have it fixed as I do and as the next person does. You shouldn't have to be on social media in order to get this problem resolved. And if this problem wasn't resolved with this case of this deep cleaning and the angle of the blade, if it hadn't have been resolved, then that also, what then? Because they were no longer going to actively look for a solution. So if this hadn't worked, I still would be left with a car that didn't function properly during the rain at night. Which kind of leads me to the point of, well, what's going to happen now with the car, right? It's gone. I'm getting rid of it. Even though the problem had been fixed or has been fixed, it looks like it's been fixed, it makes no difference to me, because the way that they behaved in terms of knowing that there was this issue and then having a blanket statement to cover it didn't sit well with me. So even though it looks like the problem is resolved, it makes no difference. I no longer want to deal with a company that would actually do that to somebody. Not just me, but anybody else. And if you look at the comment section, there are a lot of people experiencing a lot of problems who aren't getting any resolution whatsoever. And that sucks. You should be able to buy a car and know that it's going to run as well as it should, and that you should have vision out of that car, and it should not be distorted. So I'm getting rid of it. I'm going back to Mini, because Mini gave me no trouble. I've had no problems with them. And if I do have a problem, I know that Mini will deal with it, because they are very quick and swift. And they always have been in my case. I only ever had a single problem with Mini once. And they literally, and I mean this literally, stripped the car down to its bare bones to find out what was causing it, rebuilt it, and it was perfect since. I had a loan car for about 3 weeks at that point. They were absolutely splendid in dealing with the issue. And this wasn't an issue that would cause an accident. It was an annoyance that was happening with the car. This problem with the Tesla was something that could have caused an accident, because there was vision loss and vision distortion. And they were happy to allow me to continue to drive it. And if this deep clean and angle of the blade and tension hadn't have worked, then it wouldn't have mattered, because they were no longer going to actively look into it. And that sucks. And that's why I've left Tesla, or I will be shortly, waiting for the new car to come, the Mini, back to a Mini. And that's the end of this issue for me. It's irritating because, of course, there's been a massive depreciation on the car. So I've lost all that money, and they don't care. They're not going to reimburse me. They're not going to offer any form of compensation for it, because technically they fixed the problem. So therefore I should stay with them, but I won't, and I will never ever will again, because there's no guarantee with this situation that it would ever get resolved. It's just sheer luck that it got resolved this time, and it required the least amount of resistance. And even today it was mentioned on the phone that maybe these deep cleans are something that they need to do once or twice a year in order to maintain glass clarity. And that might be true. I don't know, because I no longer have the characteristic of the Model 3 on my car anymore. So is it a characteristic or isn't it? Who knows? But it did get resolved mostly. I'm no longer with Tesla. I'll be leaving them shortly. They did not win me back. They did not do anything that would make me want to stay with them, because you shouldn't have to be on social media in order to get a response. You shouldn't have to be on there in order to get a problem that is dangerous fixed. And that sucks. So I thought I'd give you an update. Thank you for all the comments and questions that you posed on those videos. They were really interesting, and a lot of people were mentioning the same thing about the watermarks, and that they just needed to be polished out and the blades needed to be looked at. Turns out it was relatively simple. Didn't require 2 windscreens, just a little elbow grease, a machine to polish it, and to check that tension of the blade with regards to where it was in the glass. Simple. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon, and thank you for all your comments. Bye bye.